Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. So today we've got another episode of the most powerful commanders that you can build on a budget. This episode's actually going to be part 4, so if you haven't seen part 3 yet, check it out here. Also, just a quick note before we jump into this. In those previous episodes, I was bucketing the commanders into different categories. But for this episode, I'm just going to be going over commanders without putting them into categories. With all that being said, let's get started. Our first powerful budget commander is Tatiana Benthic Druid. Tatiana is a 3/3 Merfolk Druid that costs 3 green-blue. She has whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So she provides you a ton of value for something that you already want to do in Commander. Ramping is crucial and she benefits you whenever you ramp. She's going to draw you more cards which can help you ramp further, and so on and so forth. Tatiana is a fantastic budget commander because there are plenty of great ramp cards out there that are pretty cheap. And because she's going to draw you a ton of cards, she can help you dig to the right cards that you need. And don't sleep on that part about gaining life either. She can help pad your life total to keep you alive while you ramp and dig through your deck. So with this kind of a deck, you're going to be running plenty of ramp spells, especially ones that get multiple lands. So a card like Hero can provide you a ton of value for just 3 mana. It makes you sacrifice 1 land, but you get 2 basics into play untapped. So this is only going to ramp you by 1 land, but it will gain you 2 life and draw you 2 cards. And for just 3 mana, that's a fantastic deal. And because you're drawing so many cards, you don't even have to search for them either. A card like Summer Bloom is going to let you play up to 3 additional lands in a turn. With the amount of cards that you're going to be drawing, chances are you're going to have 3 lands in your hand. When you play those, you're going to be gaining 3 more life and replacing those cards by drawing 3 more. You're also going to be running other landfall effects to provide you a ton of value. For example, Rampaging Bailiff has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 4/4 green beast creature token. So now each land that comes into play becomes even more value and really helps you take over the game. Tatiana is an incredible value engine that benefits you from doing something that you already want to do in Commander. There are plenty of budget cards that work really well with it, and that's why it's a fantastic option as a budget commander. Another powerful budget commander to consider is Omnath, Locus of Rage. Like Tatiana, it also focuses on getting lands into play. It's a 5/5 elemental that costs 3 red, green. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. And then whenever Omnath, Locus of Rage, or another elemental you control dies, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So essentially, whereas Tatiana is the draw engine, this is going to be your threat. It only takes you a few landfall triggers to get a ton of power onto the board with this. And those elementals are especially deadly because when they die, Omnath gets to ping something for 3. Like I mentioned when talking about Tatiana, there are plenty of great budget ramp spells. An elemental ramp spell like Fertilid can be especially effective in this deck. It comes into play with 2+1 counters on it, and you can pay 1 to green to remove one of those counters to search for a basic land and put into play tapped. So essentially with this you can get 2 lands, which is going to make 2 5/5s, and then when this dies you can ping something for 3. You're also going to want some ways to draw cards like Elemental Bond. It says whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So basically with this in play, you've got your own Tatiana minus life gain. So every time a land comes in play, you get that 5/5 and draw a card. Another kind of enchantment that can come in huge is Where Ancients Tread. It says whenever a creature with power 5 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Where Ancients Tread deal 5 damage to target creature or player. So with this in play, while you're building your army, you're also dealing a ton of direct damage. Again, decks like Tatiana and Omnath can be built on a budget because there are a lot of great ramp cards out there. Both are going to benefit you for ramping, which is important in Commander. And each can get out of hand really quickly once you're set up right. Another powerful budget commander is Talrand Sky Summoner. I actually recently did a Crushing Quarters episode on this commander where I only use cards that are 25 cents or less. So even on the smallest of budgets, this commander can be fantastic. Talrand is a 2/2 Merfolk wizard that costs 2 blue. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. So this commander gives you a big benefit every single time you cast an instant or sorcery. Now a 2/2 on its own might not be that powerful, but the more that you create, the more threatening your army becomes. And flying is a fantastic form of evasion, so you can get through most defenses with ease. The reason that this is a fantastic budget commander is that there are a lot of options for instants and sorceries. You might not be able to use the expensive ones, but there are plenty of cheap options when it comes to mana cost and price. Most of your instants and sorceries in this deck will probably have a converted mana cost of either 1 or 2 mana. because again, the more of those spells that you can cast, the more drakes that you can create, and the quicker you can take over a game. Even a card like Clairvoyance can come in huge for this deck. It lets you look at target player's hand, and it does draw you a card, but not until next turn's upkeep. So that's almost as good as a normal cantrip, and you'll have plenty of those in this deck as well. Seeing opponent's hands can come in big for this deck because you're going to be running a ton of counter spells. Knowing what's coming can even make a cheap one like Turn Aside be fantastic in this deck. It's going to counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. Keeping Tolerant on the board is crucial for this deck, so counter spells like this can come in huge. Also, if you've got a way like Murmuring Mystic to make more tokens, you can really take over the game quickly. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue blurred illusion creature token with flying. So now your instants and sorceries become even more valuable, giving you 3 power instead of 2. Again, Tolerant opens up a ton of options when it comes to what budget cards you can use. The vast majority of instants and sorceries can be considered for this deck, but even a more linear commander like Prime Seeker Vannifar can be very powerful on a budget as well. She's a 2/4 Elfoo's wizard that costs 2 green blue. She has tap, sacrifice another creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library, activate this ability only the time that you could cast a sorcery. So basically she's a creature with a birthing pod effect. With this kind of a deck, you're going to be going up the chain. Essentially that means that you're going to sacrifice a creature, go get another one that comes into play and untaps her. Then you're going to tap her and sacrifice that creature to go get another one that untaps her, and so on and so forth. Each of these creatures is going to have a higher and higher mana cost each time you do that. At a certain point, you can tutor in the creature that you need to win. There are only so many creatures with untap effects out there, but most of them are cheap. For example, Bounding Crest is at 3 mana and Preaching Hippocamp is at 4. Once you're going up the chain, you can get to something like Protean Hulk and sacrifice it, and then you can search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana costs of 6 or less and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is a very common way of getting some creatures that can combo together to win. Now, Protean Hulk is definitely more expensive than most budget cards that I use, but keep in mind that the rest of the deck is fairly budget, so it can make up for that cost. Also, since you're in Simic, you've got access to some of the best ramp and card draw in the game, and because of all those options that it gives you, that can definitely help with your budget as well. A somewhat similar tutoring commander that can be built on a budget is Zur the Enchanter. It's a 1/4 human wizard with flying that costs 1 white, blue, black. It has whenever it attacks, you may search your library for an enchantment card with converted mana cost of 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you do, shuffle your library. This kind of tutoring effect is extremely powerful, and with the right build, it just takes an attack or two to really turn a game on its head. It's a fantastic commander that can get the right enchantment for the right situation that you're in. This is even a good commander to build a budget stacks deck around. Just by tutoring up a card like Desolation can throw a wrench into a lot of opponents' plans. Desolation says at the beginning of each end step, each player who tapped a land for mana this turn sacrifices a land. Desolation deals 2 damage to each player who sacrificed a plains this way. So our opponents are probably going to need lands to make their deck work, but we don't. Once we get Zur into play, we can keep attacking and getting things for free. By getting an enchantment like Shielded by Faith, we can also protect Zur. And with this kind of a deck, we're going to run plenty of toolbox enchantments like Oblivion Ring, so we can answer essentially anything while shutting our opponents down. Yes, there are some expensive enchantments that would improve the deck, but we definitely don't have to make it still a very powerful commander on a budget. Again, that value of tutoring and putting something directly into play is huge. And you don't even have to build a stacks build to make it effective. A simple Voltron build could be very powerful as well. But next up, let's go over another powerful budget commander with Edric, Spymaster of Trest. Edric is a 2/2 elf rogue that costs 1 green blue. He has whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. Although this might incentivize our opponents to attack each other, we really don't care about that too much. The thing that we care about is getting a ton of evasive creatures out there and drawing a lot of cards with this in play. There are plenty of cheap evasive creatures out there, especially in blue. For example, there's Slitherblade, which is a 1/2 for a blue that can't be blocked. Although this won't deal us a ton of damage, it's still basically just going to draw us 1 card each turn. Other forms of evasion like flying can come in huge as well. Chances are something like Scrib's Rights can get through on at least one of our opponents. When we're drawing to all of these cards, we're hoping to draw into some very powerful ones like extra turn spells. Now there's only so many budget extra turn spells like Karn's Temporal Sundering. That being said, most of the other cards in this deck are going to be very cheap. So even with just a few extra turn spells, we can make this deck very powerful. And then it's only going to take either 1 or 2 pump spells to finish everyone off. Again, this is a very low to the ground and quick deck that can generate an absurd amount of card advantage. The cards that it's going to be using are cheap in both mana cost as well as price. This deck can definitely get out of hand very quickly and get you way ahead of your opponents in no time at all. Our next powerful budget commander is Emry, Lurker of the Loch. Emry is a 1/2 merfolk wizard that costs 2 and a blue. He has this spell cost 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. And when Emry, Lurker of the Loch enters the battlefield, you put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. You can tap her and choose target artifact card in your graveyard, and you may cast this card this turn. So a deck like this is going to want to run a ton of cheap artifacts. And believe me, there are plenty of cheap budget artifacts out there to choose from. The more artifacts that are in play, the cheaper she's going to be to cast. And when she comes into play, she's going to mill you, which gives you access to some artifacts in your graveyard. She's also a very abusable commander with the right setup. Artifacts or other spells that can untap her can get out of hand very quickly. For example, an artifact like Quarter Monitor can be fantastic for this deck. When it's in your graveyard, you can tap Emry so that you can cast it from your graveyard. And then when it comes into play, you can untap Emry so that you can use it for something else. And a card like Mirror and Spy even takes this a step further. It says whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may untap target creature. So now every single artifact that you cast from your graveyard is going to untap Emery so you can tap her again. This in combination with things like Ethereum Sculptor can be huge. Ethereum Sculptor is going to reduce the cost of your artifact spells by 1. So essentially at a certain point you can cast your artifact spells from your graveyard for free. And with a sacrifice outlet, you can essentially just keep sacrificing those artifacts to recast them and so on and so forth. With the right setup, you can easily storm off and win the game. A final powerful budget commander to build around is Korvold Faker's King. A quick note again though, when I'm saying budget commander to build around, I mean the deck itself, not necessarily the price of the commander. As you can see, Korvold is nearly $20, which is not a cheap price for a commander. That being said, there are plenty of budget cards out there that work very well with Korvold. Anyways, Korvold is a 4/4 flying dragon noble that costs 2 black, red, green. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you sacrifice another permanent, and whenever you sacrifice a permanent, you put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and you draw a card. The amount of value that this gives you every single time you sacrifice a permanent is huge. +1/+1 counters are great, but drawing you cards are even more effective. This can get out of hand very quickly, and you can even get Korvold up to over 21 in no time. Even simple ramp spells like Springbloom Druid can provide you a good amount of value for this deck. When it comes into play, you're going to sacrifice a land, and then you get 2 basics into play tapped. Again, when you sacrifice that land, you're pumping Korvold and you're drawing a card. Even a card like Ulvenwald Mysteries can find a place in this deck. It's an enchantment that says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, you put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token onto the battlefield. So essentially when you sacrifice a creature, you draw a card and you get a clue out of it. Then when you sacrifice that clue, you draw another card and you get a human token. Then by sacrificing that human token, you get to draw another card. So basically with this in play, you can get an absurd amount of value for just one creature. And then a card like Brass's Bounty is an absolute bomb in this deck. It says for each land you control, create a colorless treasure token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So basically for each land you have, you get to draw a card and you get to add 1 mana. That's a crazy amount of value and can really help you go off. It doesn't take too much setup for this commander to get out of control quickly. But now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on these commanders are. Is there a powerful budget commander that I haven't mentioned yet? And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.